Coming up on Arirang News, President Moon Jae-in says the economic relief payments to millions of South Korean households seem to be working. They boosted consumption and brought people comfort. China lowers its official exchange rate for its currency to the weakest level it's been since the 2008 global financial crisis. That's adding to concerns about a potential currency war. And millions more South Korean school kids will be going back to school tomorrow. With coronavirus cases still occurring, the government says it's prepared for any possible emergency. It's 5:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. There have been fewer than 20 new coronavirus cases in South Korea for a second day in a row now, but millions more kids are about to go back to school tomorrow, so there are still concerns. Our Kim Do-yeon has the latest.
As of midnight Tuesday, South Korea reported 19 new cases of COVID-19. The country is still on high alert, with classes to start in person for more students in high school, middle school, elementary, and kindergartens. This is a second phase of the gradual opening. So far, only high school seniors have gone back. The government, though, says it's ready for any kind of emergency.
If there's a confirmed case at a school, the faculty and students will be sent home wearing masks. The respective local authorities will proceed with their epidemiology, disinfection, and quarantine measures.
The health agencies are especially concerned about the cluster linked to nightclubs in the Seoul neighborhood of Itaewon. Of Tuesday's cases, 10 were related to this cluster, bringing the total to 255. And of those, 30% are asymptomatic, which has allowed the virus to spread silently.
Because most COVID-19 patients are asymptomatic, and because the virus spreads when there are no symptoms, especially among young people, this global pandemic has occurred.
The government is pleading with people to behave responsibly, but it's also being strict on those who don't follow the rules. A 27-year-old man has been sentenced to 4 months in jail for breaking the quarantine regulations. He was arrested for leaving his quarantine location 2 days before his quarantine was over. In addition, a 68-year-old man is awaiting a court ruling accused of visiting public saunas and restaurants while under quarantine. As of midnight Tuesday, South Korea has had 11,225 confirmed cases. With 2 additional deaths reported, the death toll stands at 269. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The defense ministers of South Korea and the U.S. are looking to hold a video conference next month since an annual defense meeting in Singapore, known as the Shangri-La Dialogue, has been canceled because of the pandemic. Usually the two allies hold talks one-on-one there on the sidelines. Seoul's defense ministry said they're still discussing the specific date and agenda for the video conference. Local media outlets report that the two sides are expected to discuss pending issues regarding North Korea and the sharing of their defense costs, an area where the allies' negotiations have recently stalled. President Moon Jae-in says he is pleased that the government's emergency relief payments have been able to comfort and support South Korean households. In a cabinet meeting today, Moon said both spending and donating the payments is helping the economy. Kim Min-ji reports.
President Moon Jae-in highlighted the positive impact of the unprecedented cash handouts to all households in South Korea, saying that they've been able to lift consumption. Speaking at a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, Moon thanked the people for actively spending the money, adding that it's helped the economy.
월목상권과 소상공인들에게도 실질적으로 도움이 되고 있습니다. 재난지원금이 소비로 이어져 소상공인 매출 감소폭이 둔화되었고 카드 매출은 작년 수준을 회복한 것으로 나타나고 있습니다.
Perhaps a reflection of that, consumer confidence recovered slightly in May. Data from the Bank of Korea showed the Consumer Sentiment Index as 77.6 for this month, up 6.8 points from April. The central bank attributed the improvement to the slowing pace of new infections, the resumption of economic activity amid social distancing, as well as the government's relief funds and other stimulus measures.
경제 위축으로 허리띠를 졸라매었던 국민들의 마음이 와닿아서 가슴이 뭉클하기도 합니다. 재난지원금이 힘겨운 사람들 마음을 따뜻하게 덮여주고 있는 것 같아서 보람을 느낍니다.
The president also thanked those that have donated their share, saying that the funds will be used to help secure jobs and support people who have lost their jobs. Moon added that it's hard for the government's fiscal measures alone to deal with an emergency situation like this, stressing that whether it's consumption or donations, he hopes it gives the country strength to overcome the crisis. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
China's central bank has cut its official rate for the yuan to the lowest it's been in 12 years. It's said to be in response to the Trump administration threatening to impose sanctions over China's proposed national security law for Hong Kong. Kim Na-mi has the details.
China's central bank has lowered its official yuan midpoint to its weakest level since the 2008 global financial crisis. Reuters reports the People's Bank of China on Monday set the midpoint at around 7.1209 yuan per US dollar prior to the market open. That's 0.38% lower than the previous fix of 7.0939. Beijing's move hints at yet another showdown between the US and China, as bilateral relations between the world's two superpowers have deteriorated over COVID-19 and China's proposed new national security law for Hong Kong. But analysts stress it's too early to assume this signals the start of a currency war between Washington and Beijing. Reuters says China's move merely reflects losses in the spot yuan. In fact, the offshore Chinese yuan hit a two-month low of 7.1644 against the greenback last Friday following Beijing's new law proposal, as investors flocked to the dollar, a traditional safe haven. Having the yuan's daily reference rate above $7 is considered the marginal line for China. In fact, Beijing set the rate below 7 yuan a dollar when the U.S. and China reached their Phase 1 trade deal earlier this year. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, China is targeting a 2020 budget deficit of at least 3.6% of GDP, well above last year's 2.8%. Despite active financial measures taken by China to boost its sluggish economy during the pandemic, analyst concerns linger over Beijing's financial woes. Kim Na-mi, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, global strategist at Yuan Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, the Wall Street markets were closed Monday for Memorial Day, but in Europe, stocks were strongly higher on hope for an economic recovery. Looks like most Asian markets were up today, too. Take us through the global markets.
Sure. As you said, global market, other than U.S. market, showed a very strong rise on Monday as well as today. If you look at the European market, yesterday on Monday, it rose by more than 2%. The DAX index, the German index, was up 2.9%, and most of the other indices were up anywhere between 2 to 3%. Because of the optimism over the easing coronavirus-related lockdown measures and signs for the stimulus for the Eurozone economies. The stronger than expected German IFO Business Climate Index for May also supported the sentiment. In addition to that, the Asian markets showed very strong rise on Tuesday. The Japanese market showed a strong rise because of the investors are cheering for the reopening of the economy and hoping that a potential vaccine could help to fight the corona pandemics. In addition to that, various other countries, including Korea, showed very strong rise globally despite all the concern of the U.S.-China trade dispute.
Right, big gains on the Korean markets today as well. Again, it seems on hope for the reopening of major economies. What's the story here?
Yes, as you said, Korean markets showed a very strong move in addition to yesterday's rise. Kospi was up by 1.76%. Kosdaq was up by 1.28%, a very strong rise. And as of today, the 2,000 mark has been broken. Now it's above 2,000 now. If you look at the composite consumer sentiment index, it came out at 77.6 in May from 70.8 from the previous month. And clearly it's showing that the sentiment is improving. And also, if you look at the fundamental numbers, it seems to be very strong, especially for the Kosdaq index. The earnings revisions are going up as the overall industries, particularly the bio sector, is receiving more stronger factors that shows a recovery due to the COVID-19 issues. So Korea's overall fundamentals are improving, and that resulting into the better residual income model target prices, and clearly that is affecting the Korean overall equity market. So I think that is a sign of a bit of a re-rating for Korean equity market, and we think that should continue throughout the year this year.
Now, as we heard a minute ago, with China lowering its official rate for the yuan, there's talk of a currency war between the U.S. and China. Looking at the Korean currency today, it's a little stronger against the dollar. What's happening with exchange rates, and what effect would a U.S.-China currency war have on the Korean markets?
Right. I think that current concern about the U.S.-China dispute is a bit of a talk rather than actual actions. Clearly, both countries are administrating a very aggressive measures to boost the economy because of the COVID-19 issues. Overall, the economies are slowing down or actually showing a negative growth rate. So obviously, they need to put a very aggressive monetary and fiscal policy, and that's what they're doing. And they like to see the economy recovers. Now, if they actually go through this trade dispute or trade war per se, then obviously the economic recovery is not going to happen, and that is going to be very negative for both the head of the economies. So I don't think that Trump is going to push too hard because he wants to win the re-election. And as for the Chinese, they want to wait until the election actually happens for U.S. So we think that it's a lot about talks rather than the actual actions. So therefore, we think that we should be watching much closely of the current boosting measures rather than these all talks. We think that these boosting measures are very large to the sense that the economy should recover. If that's the case, we think the currency adjustment is not going to be that significant. We think that the dollar index should remain at around 100 range. Also, that will result into probably very stable Korean won currency as well. We think that it should be trading anywhere between 12.20 to 12.50 range. And that also applies for yuan as well. The yuan should be trading somewhere between 7 to 7.3, we think. So overall, yes, the currency issues is remaining, but nevertheless, we think that the boosting measures are much bigger and larger issue for the market.
Got it. All right, Mr. Yu, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for sharing your insights.
Thank you very much.
Samsung Electronics had the biggest share of the world's smartphone market in the first quarter of this year at 20%. According to market tracker Counterport Research, Samsung remained the top seller despite an on-year decline in the first quarter of 19%. Smartphone shipments worldwide fell 13% on year to around 295 million units, which was the first time in 6 years they've fallen below 300 million. For the first time, South Korea's biggest conglomerate, Samsung Group, will be holding its hiring exam online. Samsung held an online orientation Tuesday for applicants taking the Samsung Aptitude Test to make sure they can connect to the system and show them how it works. The test will be held at 4 different times on May 30th and May 31st. Tens of thousands of applicants will be taking it from home, monitored by video using their own smartphones. Samsung has sent each applicant a package containing a smartphone holder and a cover to put on their ID card so certain key information on it doesn't show on the screen. Higher education in the United States, some experts say, stands to lose more than $4.5 billion because of the pandemic. The Association of International Educators, or NAFSA for short, says it's likely already cost the sector nearly $1 billion. NAFSA conducted a survey in April that found 78% of international students do not plan on enrolling in U.S. colleges next semester. Almost the same percentage said to keep going they would need ongoing support and employment. NAFSA said it plans to ask Congress to waive requirements like in-person visa interviews and provide them with direct financial assistance. South Korea has decided to ban the production and sale of nearly 3 dozen drugs used to treat diabetes after regulators found they contain a cancer-causing impurity called nitrosodimethylamine. The Ministry of Food and Drug Safety said Tuesday that 31 of the 288 diabetes drugs it tested have been found to contain the compound in higher than allowed amounts. However, the ministry emphasized that at such low levels, the compound is not expected to cause harm. More than 260,000 patients have been prescribed these drugs by doctors in South Korea. That brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.